So, what are some overall rules? So, no matter what essay you're doing, whether this essay or any other essays, as it relates to the college application process, let me tell you the rules. Number one, show, not tell. What does that mean? Don't tell me you're a generous person. Don't tell me that you're a critical thinker. You need to back that up with evidence, right? I want to see some receipts, right? If you're a generous person, you better take me down a story about you being generous. If that's what you want them to know, you're going to take me down that story about how generosity either came into your life, how you learned it, and then how you display it. So again, don't just tell me all of these things. So this is actually one of the hardest things with students, right? They want to tell so many things. But the essay is that if you look at the last point, it's an opportunity for you to go deep. So you ask yourself, what do I want the admissions counselor to know at the end of reading my essay? I want them to know that I am a critical thinker. Okay, great. That is the insight that you want them to get from reading your essay. So remember, there's you, you're the center of the story. That's number 3 on here. You're the center of the story. And the thing that you want them to gain insight about you is that you're a critical thinker, right? Now you have to find a story that backs that up. And the story is going to be slowed down, right? We're not going to just get right into the story. We want to go to before the story, how the story like develops. Did you learn that critical thinking was hard for you? What were the pitfalls? I'm going to take you through how to write a story, but ultimately you want to go deep in this one story. So I had a student recently this year preparing for their college application. And this particular student had like 3 stories. And they said, Tiffany, I want to tell the admissions counselor that I'm this XYZ in terms of a personality trait that they're so proud of. And they said to me, I'm going to use these 3 stories. I said, okay. I said, well, you got 650 words. How much are they really going to get with these stories if you do all 3, right? Because again, I advise and you all will decide whatever you like to do. And so I said, you know what? Why don't you write the stories? Because sometimes it's better to get them all down, then realize like, oh no, I can't do all the things I want to do with each story. I got to take it out. But at least you have 3 really full options. So don't try to like minimize things right away. So the student wrote it down. They were like, Tiff, you're right. Like there's not enough space to really go deep and showcase why this personality trait is important to me, how I gained it, and how I still use it today. And so, whenever you're thinking about your story, you want to think about one story in your life that exemplifies or shows the development of whatever question you're going to use, right? So, for all the application platforms, Coalition, Common App, even individual websites where you're going to fill out your application, they're going to have different prompts for you. And the prompts are going to be things like, tell us about a character trait that you develop, tell us about a belief that you have, tell us about a journey in your life, tell us about your background or culture. You can tell us anything, but all of these are still going to follow the story model that I'll teach you. It doesn't matter what the question is, you have to be able to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So that way they can read it. And also, in any story that you tell, you always want to show yourself in a positive light. So this is super important. Even if the story seems like you might be negatively portrayed, you have to go ahead and flip that. Or maybe find another story. Maybe this is not the story you want to use for your application. It's a story about your life and something that's important. But if you don't know how to like kind of get them to see the insight, this positive trait about you, or this positive value that you display, or a piece of your background or your culture, etc., or how you overcame adversity, even if the story seems like it's brim and it's hard to like swallow because it's really difficult. If they don't have the insight on how you got through it, that's the positive trait, right? You want to make sure that you show yourself in a positive light. Another pitfall that people get into is talking about somebody else. And I always use this example every year because it works, right? Imagine you being an admissions counselor and you're reading an essay. And someone submits an essay and it's about how their grandmother is just an amazing person who raised them and they're kind and they're giving and, all of these things. Grandma, manages work and the home, and grandma does all these things for the community. Remember, you have 650 words. It's all about grandma. Listen, grandma would love for you to honor her. Doesn't mean it's in your college essay, because you know what I want to do if I'm a reader? I want to get on the phone and call grandma and say, hey, listen, you're amazing. it looks like your grandchild wrote an essay about you, and I know they're applying to the school, but I actually want to give you an offer because I learned all about you and you're incredible. And so remember, at the end of the essay, make sure they're going to have more insight on who you are. Again, you can pull other elements, people, places, things, movies, TV shows, books, ideas into your essay, but you have always got to be the center of every single line on that page. And again, that was one of the barriers. It might be uncomfortable for you, but that's okay. Remember that essay I read to you in the opening? Remember, just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's dangerous or wrong, right? It's just new. And so we're going to lean into that newness and we're going to do this. All right. Be creative. Remember, a lot of you might have very similar story ideas, right? Maybe depending on what you've been through. If you're an athlete, you're talking about sports. The sports is kind of the overall idea, but guess what? It has to be unique to you. So if it's not unique to you, if you can read the story or someone could read the story and say, oh, that could be about everyone on our team, that means it's not unique to you. You have to find what is it about you. And again, I'm going to teach you how to dive deep because again, you're dealing with another human's heart who's reading this essay. We want to go ahead and get their pulse going as they're reading it. So that way they can get really excited about who you are. Other rules, just start writing, right? I always tell students this all the time. Do not worry about the word count. I know the word count is going to be 500 for some of those schools, 650 for the Common App. It could be 700. It can be 450. It does not matter what the word count is. Get words on paper. Don't worry about the grammar right now. Grammar will save itself later, right? We're going to talk about grammar later, but it will come at a later point. At this point, we just need ideas. Because if you have anyone read your essay, what they can do is read your essay and all the ideas you have on paper. What they can't do is get feedback on anything that's in your mind. Because unless you know somebody who is a mind reader, which I don't, and I would love to meet someone, because I got some minds I would like to read, ultimately, they can't get feedback on what they don't know. So this is an opportunity for you to put everything on paper. This is very different than you writing a paper based off of history. We know all the facts. We know what you should kind of know that you should be infusing in the essay. This is about you. So no one can really fill in those gaps except for you. And get used to lots of feedback. Don't take it personal. I know it's your personal story and it might hurt, but remember, they're giving you feedback because they want you to win. And this is super important as well. Try to ask people to read your essay who don't know you too well. Let me tell you something that I do. And as a counselor, something that I fall in the trap of doing. So if I fall in the trap of doing it, I know that other people who are not in this field fall in the trap of doing it. So let's say I know a student, right? Knew them for 4 years throughout high school, watched them grow, watched them develop, know their family, know that they're in sports. Maybe I coach them. I can know this kid. We can kind of determine that. Well, let's say I'm reading their essay now, right? And so because I know them so well, the essay makes so much sense, even with things that are unsaid that should be in the essay to give context. So when you ask people like me, who's someone who's familiar with the students that I work with, if you ask someone like me to read an essay, I have to be very careful not to try to read into or to fill in the gaps for things that are not there. I can only say, okay, if I was a stranger reading this, I know you put this line here about something that happened at home. But remember, they don't know you. They can't fill in that comma before. They can't put a semicolon after and say, oh yeah, this is what they're talking about. They actually could be lost. So even get into the habit of taking a risk and asking someone who doesn't know you as well, maybe a teacher who doesn't know all of your, background and those sorts of things. Asking someone else to read it is so helpful because they'll be confused. And the confusion that they hold, this is why I said, don't take personal feedback. Don't take the feedback personally. That the confusion that they hold, you have to think about, that's going to be the admissions counselor because they don't know you either. So the only thing that they're going to know about you is what you put in the essay. So making sure, this is why I said only one story really can fit because you have to go into detail with this particular story.